The morning sky over London felt different that day, pale, heavy, as if the city itself had taken a long, quiet breath. Buckingham Palace stood in the muted light, its stone facades unchanged, but inside the old rooms something shifted. Routine footfalls slowed. An aide crossed the threshold with an envelope stamped urgent, and simple palace protocol took on the weight of an omen. Princess Anne, at her desk, opened that envelope the way she has opened difficult things her whole life, with steady hands and a refusal to be undone. The lines on the page were short and clinical, but their effect was anything but. They conveyed a loss she had feared in private and now faced in public. A companion from years of quiet loyalty had been taken, swiftly and without goodbye. She read it once, then again, as if repetition could alter fate. Color left her face. The calm she was known for faltered, if only for a breath. Grief is an odd thing in a palace built for ceremony. It cannot be scheduled, and it resists being managed. Yet Princess Anne chose, immediately and without drama, to carry on. When her private secretary offered to cancel the day's public commitments, she shook her head and said, simply, "I will carry on." Duty, long her compass, became both armor and ritual, a way to honor the life she had lost without making grief into spectacle. Around her, the household reacted with a quiet tenderness. Staff moved more softly, conversations lowered, schedules shifted like tides to offer room for private sorrow. An aide later whispered she did not deserve this blow, and the words threaded through the palace like a shared ache. But a palace is also a public stage, and news does not respect privacy. Within hours, the nation learned what the princess already knew. Television bulletins carried the story. Radio hosts paused, searching for words that could hold both respect and explanation. Social feeds flooded with messages of support. Candles lit in windows, flowers left at iron gates, drawings from schoolchildren tied with ribbons and sent to the palace. In homes across the UK, people watched and felt the sharp resonance of a woman famed for discipline, now revealed as heartbreakingly human. Family, as it always does, gathered. King Charles sat with his sister in moments of quiet counsel. Prince Edward and Sophie offered gentle, practical comforts. Zara and Peter brought noisy, healing interruptions. Grandchildren, whose small demands for stories and laughs eased the hours like a soft tide. Even Camilla, once peripheral in certain family narratives, stepped forward in kindness, visiting without formality, an act that reminded everyone how, at the edges of protocol, humanity persists. Princess Anne's life was never defined by ceremony alone. She was a champion rider, a woman who confronted danger with unflinching resolve, who once met an attempted abduction with the blunt refusal that would become legend. She grew under the public eye and built a life of service. That history of resilience made the current sorrow all the more affecting. The public saw not a figure of cool duty, but a human being whose grief made the palace's polished surfaces feel briefly, painfully ordinary dot in the days that followed. She sought refuge in the rhythms that had always steadied her, long rides at Gatcombe Park, the steady beat of hooves that make thought simpler and memory kinder for a moment. She allowed the photographs and letters to be held and then set down. She let herself be held by family, and where she would return to duty, she would not do so unchanged. Grief, as the palace observed, had reshaped the tone of her public work. Less sharpness, more softness. A reinscribed purpose that might steer her towards causes born of loss, recovery, and quiet care. Yet for all the tenderness the nation offered, grief is private at its core. The palace remained a place of both service and solitude, and the strongest among them continued, painfully, to reconcile those two demands. When the public saw Princess Anne offering a careful smile at a charity event, they were witnessing not an absence of sorrow, but a disciplined courage, the choice to show up, to transform private pain into public presence. if that was the private cost of loss. Another scene of national consequence was quietly unfolding elsewhere, a decision that would reframe the monarchy, not through bereavement but through law. In the week that followed, Buckingham Palace issued a decree that stunned the realm. Adjustments to royal styles and titles, enacted by the king and advised by the Privy Council. The prose of the decree was formal, its purpose framed as modernization and sustainability. But the effect was immediate and personal. Names and titles long associated with certain members were withdrawn. For some, royal styling was reduced to courtesy. For others, the language of lady replaced the dignity of princess. For a family that built its myth on continuity and shared identity, it felt like an incision. The public reaction was complex, often contradictory. Polls suggested a majority favored a leaner, more accountable monarchy, a crown that aligns with a modern taxpayer's expectations. Yet for many, the legal neatness could not soften the human edges. Images of King Charles at his desk, pen scratching the ink of the decree beneath a portrait of his late mother, circulated with a strange mix of reverence and sorrow. Outside the palace gates, crowds gathered with flowers, flags, signs pleading family over titles. Across the Atlantic, in California and beyond, silence from those affected read loud. The Sussex team offered no comment. Eugenie and Beatrice retreated from public view. Friends and supporters issued private defenses of dignity over style. Inside Sandringham, where the decision had taken shape, the process had been quiet and urgent. Prince Andrew's earlier statement of permanent retirement had catalyzed broader questions about who should carry the burden of public life. Papers were examined, letters patent, historical precedent, and cost analyses. Discussions grew technical, graphs and memos, the language of survival. But the debate was always human beneath the numbers. Was this reform a necessary pruning for an institution's long-term health, or a measure that cut too close to the family's marrow? At the heart of the controversy stood the king himself, pale and wearied but resolute. Advisors described scenes of long conversations in the Sandringham drawing room. The king at the head of the table, the air pacing, Camilla uneasy by the window. William, the future sovereign, was said to have pleaded for a decisive path, for clarity that would restore public confidence. Charles, who had been shaped by a life of duty and by the demands of stewardship, took up the pen. When the decree was signed, a single italicized line echoed in those who read it again and again. Titles are a reflection of service. When service ends, so too must the title. It was legal logic, but also an ethical argument, one that some praised and others feared. The fallout ranged from fierce public debate to raw, private reactions. Inside the family, quiet resentment simmered. We stayed quiet. We worked hard, a close friend of those affected confided, a sentiment that cut to the center of the complaint. Dignity matters where identity is at stake. For others, the move was overdue, a necessary step toward aligning ancient forms of privilege with contemporary expectations of accountability. Social media became a battlefield of values. Hashtags calling for reform trended alongside campaigns defending family, tradition, and compassion. And the king? Those who saw him in the weeks after described a man altered by what he believed he had to do. He kept late hours, saw only a small circle, and in private moments humored small reminders of the life he once enjoyed. A song hummed softly in a study as rain tapped the panes. The cost, advisors suggested, had been beyond policy. It was familial, a quiet erosion of intimacy that no constitutional justification could fully repair. For William, a public face of a modernizing monarchy, the action was not victory without consequence. Polling suggested his popularity remained solid, yet the purge left a chill on his public image, a leader who had to weigh stewardship against sympathy. In the weeks after, his public appearances carried the look of a man who had chosen duty with the cost still raw beneath his composure. and for those removed from styling. The consequences were not only ceremonial. Titles carry history, identity, and access. Without them, a family's public role is reframed. Some absorb the change with grace, others with visible pain. A mother publicly defended her daughters. A retired prince expressed stoic acceptance. The breadth of human responses revealed that reform, however rational, leaves emotional traces that the nation watched, argued, and reflected. Older generations often applauded clarity and tradition. Younger voices asked whether compassion and evolution could be balanced without erasing inheritance. The debate became an exploration of what the monarchy should be: a guardian of continuity, an institution of duty, or a symbol that must mirror society's changing values. There is, in this whole episode, a lesson about the cost of modernization. Institutions do change, sometimes by steady adaptation, sometimes by sharp correction. The Windsor's choice to redraw the map of titles aimed to secure relevance. But in doing so, it revealed a harder truth, that the preservation of an idea can require the sacrifice of people who embody it. The choice to save the crown may also be the choice to wound a household. Ultimately, history will judge whether the decree was a necessary act of survival or a tragic turning point in royal family life. For now, the image that lingers is not a triumphant headline but a quieter scene. A king at a desk, pens dry. A sister who refuses to be defined by grief. Children who find themselves recalibrated in a world that once defined them for them. The palace continues its rituals. The country moves through its days. But in the long corridors and private studies, the echoes of that October week remain. A reminder that even the most ancient institutions must reckon with the fragile human hearts that sustain them.